So there's probably been no other type of watch like the GMT that has been completely changed in its landscape over the last 5 years. We posted a video 2 years ago, and typically when you post a video 2 years ago about a subject, it doesn't become obsolete that quickly. But in the case of the GMT market, more towards the attainable end of things, it quickly did become so much so that we have to revisit this topic 2 years later, looking at a complete list of some of the GMT watches in the attainable watch spectrum, with most of these watches, if not all of these watches, not being included just in 2023, which is insane to think about, but it shows the progression that we have seen in this entire segment of the market. So what specifically are we gonna be looking at in this video? First, just mechanical GMTs only, because I think that is where we saw the most change in the past couple of years with the release of the 9075 from Mido and then the 4R34 from Seiko, making it possible for other brands to get into the mix. Adding to the number of releases available really are micro brands, because a lot of the movement that we have seen have come from the availability of different calibers in the market, especially under $1,000. And then attainable, I know that's a weird word at times and trying to classify it. So we're starting from things just for a few $100s, moving up to $5,000. Why I'm saying that this is going to batch everything in is because there's this larger chasm between the segment that we're looking at here and that next tier of GMT watches. I look back to around 2018 when the Tudor Black Bay GMT came out, and that was a changing of the norm that we saw with mechanical GMTs for that price segment. Basically around that price and below is what we're looking at here today. Also, if you are in the market for a GMT, we have a complete collection down below on our website where you can shop around for some different GMTs, affordable all the way to luxury. We have in that collection brands like Seiko, we have Longines, Mido, Certina, Omega, Grand Seiko, and a lot more. Dozens and dozens of picks there in that collection. Also, while you're on the website, check that little bubble in the bottom right corner. What that is going to be is one of my team members on live chat. We're there 18 hours a day. So if you have a question about a watch on our website, before you look to purchase, feel free to use that as a resource. They're watch enthusiasts. That's not AI down there. That's a real person on the other line, so they'd be happy to help you out. So let's kick things off with the micro brand category. And first we look at two micro brands in one with a singular release. We have Nodus as well as Raven with the Trail Trekker. So this is a watch coming in at under $1,000. You're getting a 39.5 millimeter diameter, thickness of 11.8 millimeters, and a lug to lug just shy of 47 millimeters, water resistance of 200 meters, and this is utilizing the 9075 from Mido, true GMT functionality operating at 4 Hertz. So this is a combination of efforts between two well-regarded micro brands in the scene. What the watch is presented as is this attractive gunmetal gray DLC finish that is harder than PVD. It has a fixed 24-hour bezel. You have that Mido 9075 on the inside, screw down crown, Swiss Superluminova, great legibility, and really a handsome tool watch that reminds you a lot of probably the Explorer 2. But I love this blacked, grayed out look with this high contrast when it comes to the applied numerals. Now for our next watch on this list, we shift things down to a smaller case size. This is one of the more attainable watches, if not the most attainable watch on this list. This is from a brand called Adapt. This is their Series 1 dual time GMT. If you're not familiar with Adapt, and I believe it goes by Adapt, this is Worn & Wound's in-house brand that they have created. More of this everyday carry style that they're bringing forth in this package for a GMT watch. So you're getting a 38 millimeter diameter, 13.6 millimeters in thickness, but still getting 200 meters of water resistance. This is also a titanium case as well, and this is running off the NH34 or the third-party variation of the 4R34, basically a different name depending on the suppliers. But across the board, pretty compelling specs for the dollar. Wearable case, titanium to note case shape with those hooded lug design. This is an office or a collar GMT, so to change at the second crown position, you're changing the 24-hour hand rather than the local hour hand. You have a sapphire crystal bicolor unidirectional timing and compass bezel with an aluminum insert. They also have some interesting textured dials that come with these watches, and also some unique bright colorways as well to choose from. Next, we look at a French brand that has quickly amassed a pretty cult-like following for their watches, and they haven't been around for a long time. But here we have Serica with the 8315 travel chronometer. So this is a watch that combines some of the characteristics of this micro independent startup brand. They started in 2019, but really have developed this passionate following. You have this vintage look with many of these Serica models, but they have this infusion of practical design across the board with their pieces. Fantastic legibility. This watch comes with a 12-hour bicolor ceramic bezel, broad arrow handset with lollipop GMT hand. You have a dome sapphire crystal, 200 meters of water resistance. This is also a COSC certified chronometer watch as well. This comes with a SOPROD caliber on the inside. You have the choice of a 3 o'clock or a 9 o'clock crown position. So if you're a lefty, great news for you. They've also upgraded what they call their integrated vertical guilloche end link as an optional choice as well. These watches are exceptionally well finished. I remember getting hands on a Serica for the first time and I was really impressed with what they're presenting. I believe they also have a space in France now where you can actually go into their showroom and see some more of their watches, but they've really ascended in a very short period of time, and a big fan of what they're doing. So we're just in France, now we're going back over the Atlantic Ocean, heading back over the United States, going to the Midwest with Chicago, Illinois, looking at Oak and Oscar. This is their Humboldt GMT. So as I mentioned, based in Chicago, Illinois, they were part of this huge growing surge of micros and independents that were coming out of the United States in the last decade. And they have this distinct touch of this orange that's a part of their styling DNA. The Humboldt is more of their everyday style watch. What you're getting with this package is a 39.5 millimeter diameter, thickness of 12.5 millimeters, and a lug to lug of 46.8 millimeters. So wears relatively true to size, if not slightly smaller. Water resistance of 200 meters, so definitely capable, as is usually the case for many of their watches from the brand. Automatic Sellita 330 caliber on the inside, so this is a collar GMT movement. Very simple, high contrast type of presentation with that signature pop of orange. Anti-magnetic case construction, the bidirectional steel 24-hour bezel, and then the sandwich dial with Swiss Superluminova as well. And then one final watch I want to include in the micro category is the Traska Venture GMT. When I first handled a Traska watch, I believe it was their Summit Tier many years ago, I was impressed on the presentation and some of the finishing and small details of the watch. Not just the beveling that you saw on the case, but the bracelet, its articulation of the links. This was a very well-constructed package, and I think where they've gone since then is just add to the whole proposition that they're bringing forth. Now, the Venture GMT might be their best watch yet when you're going down the list of what it's packing for $700+. You have a diameter of 38.5 millimeters, wears really true to that size. Thickness is also relatively thin for a GMT with getting 150 meters of water resistance in the process. You have the automatic Mido 9075 on the inside, sapphire crystal, attractive mid-size, go anywhere, do anything style watch. 4 different dial options, phenomenal legibility across all of those. Date at 6, dome sapphire crystal, internal 24-hour bezel operated by that second crown at 10 o'clock. And one of my favorite aspects of Traska's watches is they were one of the early adopters of hardening the steel. So these are going to land in at 1200 HV on the Vickers hardness scale, which is pretty impressive if you're not familiar. That's on par with some of the tegimented cases from Zinn. So if you took a spring bar tool and just started scratching right at this, it's not going to show it. So apart from being one of the more attainable watches on this list, it's also probably the most scratch resistant watch on this list. In addition to all of this, you have a quick adjusting clasp on the fly without the need of tools. It's outdoing some of the major brands as well in the process. So now we get more into some of the mainstream brands on this list. So this was definitely not a watch that was available a couple years ago. It was just released in 2024. Not something that we were expecting, I don't believe. A Presage Cocktail Time with a GMT. So I think we're familiar with the Cocktail Time family. People absolutely adore these watches. They were first launched in 2010 with a lot of inspiration from Japanese cocktails coming out from a bar in Shibuya, Tokyo. And what they've really been able to represent is that phenomenal entry point for a dress watch that ups the finish for the price amount, because you can commonly get these for under $500. Now the GMT is going to add to the package in terms of its complexity. It's going to use the 4R34 movement like you've seen throughout this video so far, and you will see again as we continue forward. But what continues here are the spectacular dials that you come to expect from the previous Cocktail Times. Sharp looking box crystal on top that is coming in hardlex, wearable case dimensions, and a nice change to the formula that we typically see, which is more of the sport upside for a GMT watch. I also love just the ornate GMT hand, which also departs from the conventional sports interpretations. I'm just gonna lump some of the Seikos together. We're bouncing a little bit around here in terms of the price and position, but next we're gonna look at something that falls in the Luxe tier. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about here and what is Seiko Luxe, check out my tiers of Seiko video that I went through all the details about Seiko, what are the different levels of Seiko and what they have on offer in 2025. But this is the SPB 381. What this watch is a reinterpretation model, but with a new GMT caliber from Seiko offering 72 hours of power reserve, the longest ever for a Seiko. This is a collar GMT function, so you have independent adjustment of that 24-hour hand, well finished for a Seiko. You have a ceramic insert to go along with this, textured dial on this green variant, gold GMT hand, slimmer bracelet in the package as well compared to some of the other Seiko watches, and also getting phenomenal water resistance in the process since this is pulling directly from their dive watch history. And then I'm going to mention just a few Seiko SSK GMTs because there have been 2 new rollouts of SSK GMTs since we saw the initial release. You had a trio of back-to-back years of new dials and bezel options from the conventional bicolor variations, but you also saw the release of the SSK 023 and the 025, which I'll probably spend most of my time here talking about because these are a completely new platform for the SSK GMT family. What these are doing is taking the 5 sports field watches and adapting a fixed 24-hour bezel on the outside, adding the 4R34 movement on the inside, and creating a package that I think differentiates from the bicolor variants, which are more towards the SKX DNA, or maybe taking some from the GMT Master in its looks. This is more of that explorer style adventurer watch as a way to differ in its path. You have 100 meters of water resistance to go along with that, familiar hardlex crystal on top. Case is gonna be under 40 millimeters in diameter. These were released at the very early part of 2024 and have become bestsellers basically immediately. But if you have other SSK GMTs on your list, there's now a full collection of them compared to when they were initially released with just 3. Another watch from last year that takes this field identity and adds a GMT function is the Timex Expedition GMT. Now, Timex has tried to elevate what they've been doing over the last 5 or so years, especially with mechanical watchmaking, and this might be their best effort yet. What you're getting with that is a higher price, so this is just shy of $550. So for Timex, this is at the top end of what they do. So some people might be scratching their heads like, what am I getting with this? Well, on the surface, it looks very much like an Explorer 2. They have their own little small twist throughout, but what you're also getting is a 41 millimeter case diameter, 13.5 millimeters in thickness. On the inside, that NH34A caliber, 48 millimeters for the lug-to-lug, but 200 meters of water resistance, and then also a sapphire crystal and a titanium case to go along with this. The Expedition also has this unique hooded lug case design, fantastic legibility with solid loom material, bidirectional titanium bezel that can track a 3rd time zone. It might look fixed, but it is not. Screw down crown, display case back, and a great travel watch for under $600, and one that was probably unexpected from a brand like Timex. So Christopher Ward is no stranger to a GMT watch. They just recently, though, updated a line within their family with the C65 Dune Aeolian GMT. So these are brand new for 2025. You have a 38 millimeter diameter, just coming over $1,000 for this package, 11.9 millimeters in thickness, lug to lug, very compact for its size at 43.7 millimeters, 150 meters of water resistance, so more than capable there. What's powering the package is the automatic Sellita SW330-2. This is a commonly used movement from Christopher Ward over the years. Sapphire crystal on top. You have this fusion of vintage looks, unique colorways, internal 24-hour track, color match date at 6, a selection of strap and bracelet options, and solid value for a GMT in this price range. So Bulova was at the cutting edge of changing the GMT market under $1,000 or around $1,000 when they unveiled the Bulova Wilton. This was the package and vehicle for unveiling that 9075 a couple of years ago. So what have they done since then? We have the Bulova Oceanographer GMT. So the Oceanographer, or the Devil Diver as it is also commonly known by some collectors, is a watch that is more towards this retro 1970s design. It has this imposing formula. When you put this on the wrist, it's very recognizable. Now you add a GMT to the package, and with that, the 9075. So several different versions to choose from. The price will vary depending on which case finish you're going for. So if you want that gold tone case, that is going to add a little bit to the package, but you also have some standard stainless steel options as well. 41 millimeter diameter, 14.6 millimeters for its thickness, and 45.1 millimeter for the lug to lug. So if you look at this on paper, you might be thinking, okay, just the diameter, this is not the smallest of watches, watches, but this wears very similar to what we've mentioned with Seiko watches in the past, much smaller thanks to the shorter length of the case, 200 meters of water resistance despite adding GMT function, sapphire crystal. You have these incredibly unique hour indices, which have become part of the execution of this watch. And as mentioned, despite this being more of a GMT watch, it doesn't lose the plot of its original form of a dive watch. So these next two watches I like to put together because they come from comparable brands within the Swatch Group portfolio. They're using the same movements on the inside and they're positioned at a similar price range. We have Certina with the DS Action GMT Powermatic 80 and then also with Mido with their Ocean Star GMT. So first looking at the Certina, what you're getting here is a 41 millimeter diameter, a thickness of 13.8 millimeters and a lug to lug of 49.3 millimeters. Still getting a 200 meter water resistance rating. And if you're not familiar with Certina, they have a lot of dive watch history. All of their watches also are at minimum 100 meters of water resistance. So seeing 200's not something out of the ordinary here. You have the automatic Powermatic C07.611. This is a true GMT, and at this price range of $1,000 to $2,000, it really helps set a standard for that next tier up compared to the Miyota 9075 and the Seiko caliber that we looked at previously. You have a few different bezel options to choose from. You have a Pepsi, you have a root beer, and then also a black and a green. Now we look at the Mido Ocean Star GMT. Previously, the Ocean Star GMT was really packaged in that 44 millimeter only case, but now you're getting something that's a little bit more wearable for those on the smaller to the medium size of the wrist size spectrum. Now you have 40.5 millimeters for that case size, 13.4 millimeters in thickness, so thinner than that of the Certina we just mentioned, also getting a more compact lug to lug of 46.9 millimeters. Still getting 200 meters of water resistance because both of these watches take from their dive watch history. Similar caliber that we talked about, the C07.661. This comes with a 80-hour power reserve, a Nivacron balance spring. This is also using traditional escapement components for those that are asking. Bidirectional GMT bezel and a navy blue colorway is attractive and simple to go for. This has this applied shark tooth indices. That is the distinctive touch of this design and the nickname of this model. Box section sapphire crystal and a true flyer GMT movement on the inside. Moving along to our next brand here, we have Formex with their Reef GMT. So the Reef is Formex's diving platform that they followed up to the re-edition of the Essence, which is really the brand's best seller, but the Reef is right there as one of the important pillars of Formex. So if you're not familiar with Formex, they're a Swiss independent brand with extreme high levels of in-house capabilities. Why that is the case is the family ownership also has a company underneath their umbrella known as Dexel SA. They're a high-end supplier of cases, bracelets, and specialized parts for the entire watch industry and supplying some of the luxury big names at that. So having that in-house capability, Formex is basically the company's testing ground where they can try out some new case ideas. And you're seeing that with things like the removable bezels or something like in their Essence where they have this suspension system within the case. Now the Reef is going to offer up a COSC certified SW330 on the inside. So this is a high grade version of that caliber, 300 meters of water resistance despite being a GMT watch, 11.4 millimeters in thickness, so relatively thin as well for a watch of this type, and then a 42 millimeter diameter and a lug to lug of 47 millimeters. And I talked about the exchanging of bezels. These are available with steel bezels as well as ceramic bezels, and you have an easy interchangeable system where you can change out these bezels without the need of tools, which is pretty slick. Now, Oris is a brand with a lot of aviation themed watches within their catalog. They actually made an altimeter watch that is priced much higher than what we're looking at here today, but they're not afraid of taking some risks in the whole pilot arena. And the Pro Pilot family is one of their best sellers. Here we have the new Pro Pilot GMT. Similar package. We look at the case silhouette. This is not going to be anything new that they're bringing forth here, but you have the striking red dial, has more of this gradient effect with this black intermingled with the red display, 41.5 millimeter case diameter, thickness of 12 millimeters, lug to lug is at 49 millimeters, water resistance of 100 meters. On the inside, you have a Sellita SW330-1. Crystal is sapphire, also getting a bidirectional pulsation bezel. So you're getting GMT function with also a pulsation scale as well. Coin edge is inspired idea from a jet engine. You have this gunmetal gray case finish, and probably one of my favorite aviation themed touches in the entire industry is on this watch. You have the lift seat belt, buckle, or clasp on this piece. So a brand that was very much responsible for changing this landscape over the last few years was Longines. I think many people look at the Zulu Time first, which we'll get to. However, I want to talk about this watch because I think it's underappreciated by comparison. We have the Hydroconquest GMT, first at 41, but then came a little later, was the 43mm option. Now this is priced below that of the Zulu Time as a byproduct of this not being COSC certified. But apart from that, you're basically getting the same value proposition while getting more of this diving take on a GMT. And so far through this list, that's something that I've seen as a combination a lot. You have the diving idea fused with the GMT. So as I mentioned, two different case options to choose from. I would say the 41 is typically what people ultimately go for. 12.9mm in thickness. You have a lug-to-lug of 49.4mm. This also introduced a new dial design for the Hydroconquest family. The three-hand versions of the Hydroconquest remain with its dial layout, but these have more of an elevated look. Drops the numerals. I think it has a slightly less brutal look to it as well in the process. Still getting 300 meters of water resistance. On the inside is the L844 caliber, sapphire crystal, ceramic bezel, different dial colors to choose from, 72 hours of power reserve, and this being a true GMT movement at that. And I just mentioned it, but let's talk about the Zulu Time. The Zulu Time was initially unveiled in 2022, and then thereafter came the 39mm option to follow up the 42, and since then we've seen an S&G model, we've seen a titanium model. So the Zulu has become one of the most commercially important Longines watches in recent years, without question. You look down at the specs of this piece and it really checks off the boxes. You have a 39mm case diameter, 13.5mm in thickness, which at the time was undercutting basically any competition at that price point, with the Tudor Black Bay GMT being 1.5 millimeters thicker than that. 47mm for the lug-to-lug, so wearable on that end. You still have the choice of a 42mm option as well. 100 meters of water resistance, the L844.4 movement. This does come with a COSC certification as well. True GMT functionality. You have impressive finishing across the board. It's anti-magnetic to the ISO 764 standard. Bidirectional bezel, variety of different bezel choices that you could go for. I would say the best seller is going to be the green, but they're all very close to one another. There's no true one standout for the Zulu Time, and I think that goes to show that this is a phenomenal design platform that they've built where it can work in a variety of different instances and a variety of different takes. So a new progression in the industry is the use of Kanisi calibers in other pockets of the industry. Probably one of the most famous uses of it is within the Norqain Freedom 60 GMT. So if you're not familiar with Kanisi, what I'm talking about here, Kanisi is a manufacturing arm that is owned by several different brands, probably most notably Tudor. And what you're getting with this caliber, this is the NN20-2, which is an equivalent to the MT5652 that Tudor is going to use in some of their Black Bay GMTs. But to see this from another brand at a price range that is similar, it is slightly more than a Black Bay, so some people might be saying that this isn't necessarily going to be for them, perhaps. You can always go for the Black Bay, but I think choice is a welcome idea in watchmaking and collecting, so I am all for brands trying to change the package and presentation of what they're bringing forth with their watches. So what you get here is a case diameter of 40mm, thickness of 14.5mm, and a lug-to-lug of 49.2mm. This is drastically different than many of the GMT watches at this price range in terms of its styling, especially when you're utilizing this caliber on the inside. 100 meters of water resistance still, sapphire crystal, you have a 70-hour power reserve, intriguing 1960s design with a wide array of choices for straps, plus a bracelet option. And Norqain has just gotten their start in 2018, so it's not like they've been around for a long period of time, but what they've been able to do in that short period is pretty impressive. The ethos and design philosophy of this brand is very much tied to adventure, and you see that with some of their watches and also adding some eccentric flair for some of their line. So I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but a brand that is absolutely responsible for changing this whole industry when it came to GMTs was Tudor. There's been a couple updates though to the Tudor GMT family since we last got in front of camera talking about this subject. One is the Tudor Pelagos FXD GMT. So the Pelagos family is now, I believe, starting to get more appreciation, but for a long time, Tudor was not doing much to the Pelagos. But once we saw the FXD start to get more of a focus, there's been more of a gradual rollout in redirection and attention to this part of their catalog. The FXD is almost this love letter to the relationship that they have with the Marine Nationale and bringing it into the 21st century. So the FXD comes with those fixed lugs and having those pull-through strap options, which adds more to the tool-like look of the entire package. 42 millimeter diameter, thickness of 12.7 millimeters, lug to lug of 52 millimeters, but trust me, it does not wear anywhere near that length in practice. 200 meters of water resistance. You have a manufacturer caliber movement on the inside, grade 2 titanium construction, COSC certified movement, but also master chronometer watch at that. This is just one of a few master chronometers from the brand at this point. 65-hour power reserve, ceramic bezel insert, sapphire crystal, retro looks, and a modern Tudor timepiece. And as contrast to that modern looking Tudor watch, you then have something like this. This is the Tudor Black Bay 58 GMT. Ever since 2018, it felt like we were always having these questions surface, and the question was, are we ever going to get a Black Bay 58 with a GMT? When the GMT Black Bay was unveiled at that time and the 58 conveniently, there's always this idea, it was the top of mind of everybody. Can we see this brought together in one package? Because I think some of the challenges with the original Tudor Black Bay GMT was partially just the thickness. As much as I am all for different diameters, it seems collectively people, if they can get a watch that is thinner, that seems to be something that is generally appreciated across the board. Well, with the new 58 GMT, you're getting exactly that, and something that many people were asking for. So you have a 39 millimeter diameter, a thickness of 12.8 millimeters, which is substantially less than just shy of 15 millimeters of the original Black Bay GMT. So this is closer in thickness to the conventional Tudor Black Bay 58 than it is to something like the Black Bay Pro or the Black Bay GMT at 41 millimeters. Lug to lug is at 47.2 millimeters, water resistance of 200 meters, manufacturer caliber movement on the inside. This is the MT5450-U. This is one of the calibers that goes through some of the additional testing that also is able to allow this watch to be a master chronometer. If you've not seen the process of how this master chronometer rating is achieved at Tudor's manufacturer, we've actually done a whole tour of Tudor's manufacturer, so I'll link to that in the description down below. But this watch changed the game when it was released. You have a watch now that I think answered the call for so many people. The only maybe head scratchers for some was, why was this the color combination choice? But I personally like it. It's a different look on the design, and I think it just sets forth what is maybe the future going to be for this entire lineup. I don't have any inside information, but I imagine they're going to continue to use this in the coming years with different colors becoming available. On top of this, you get fantastic lume and also T-fit within the clasp for that bracelet for those quick adjustments without the need of tools. Now for the final watch on this list, this was actually in the previous video, but it caps off a nice little summation of what we're talking about here, up to $5,000, because it did have a slight price increase, but it's under $5,000 still. And at this point, maybe one of the most complete $5,000 watches you can buy today. This is the SBGM 221 GMT from Grand Seiko. So Grand Seiko has a variety of different tiers of their GMTs. You have some of the entry-level 9F GMTs, which are going to be their high accuracy quartz movements. Then you also have some of the high beat GMTs that are packaged in models from the SBGJs. But say you want something that is 4 Hertz in operation under $5,000, utilizing the 9S66 caliber, this is where this watch comes in. And it is one of the 3 best sellers from the brand. You have the SBGA 211, the Snowflake, the SBGA 413, the Spring from the Four Seasons collection, and this watch. These seem to be the watches that everybody loves from Grand Seiko collectively and are some of the brand's best sellers. And for good reason here. This is priced at more of the entry point for a mechanical Grand Seiko, 39.5 millimeters in diameter, thickness of 13.7 millimeters, a lug to lug of 46.9 millimeters. As I mentioned, you have a 70+ hour power reserve. 9S66 is a 4 Hertz beat operation for this movement. Sapphire crystal. The dial of this piece is subdued, but it's so phenomenal with the high contrast of that tempered blue GMT hand. You have those highly faceted hour markers throughout, the raised GS logo. And thus far, we've seen a lot of aviation themed GMTs. We've seen a lot of diving GMTs now, but what about just a dressed GMT? If you're someone who's a business traveler, you are finding yourself more in corporate attire, maybe a suit, what are your options for you? I mean, plenty of these watches chosen before this could certainly do the job, but this is more towards that traditional romantic idea of a dress watch while also giving you some everyday upside in the process. Yes, it only comes with 30 meters of water resistance, which is the major drawback of this design in my opinion. But if you factor in the versatility of the design, the presentation, this is easily one of the most complete watches under $5,000 today. And when friends, customers ask me, what is a recommendation to get started with Grand Seiko, this is always on the short list and something that I will recommend for them. But all right, guys, that is our video here today looking at some of the best GMT watches up to $5,000, mechanical GMTs up to $5,000 in today's industry. I am really surprised about how much has changed in a short period of time with GMTs. It's impossible to basically keep up at this point. I think we've reached a point of maturity for the GMT watch today where it is now probably going to slow down, and when a new brand comes out with a GMT, it's probably not going to have the same buzz that maybe it did a few years ago. When I was first getting into watches, finding GMTs under $1,000, mechanically speaking, was not something that you could regularly do. So now you are just overwhelmed with the amount of options. So it's a great time to be a collector and an enthusiast. And from micro brands to mainstream brands, you just have such a beautiful variety to choose from today. If you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Really do appreciate that. Do you have a favorite GMT under $5,000? Do you have one in your collection or maybe on this list? Is there something that you would recommend to people from your experience and your perspective? Leave a comment down below. Also check out teddybaldestar.com. teddybaldestar.com is an authorized dealer for over 30 brands. Every purchase from our website comes with quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. Also, if you're ever in the Cleveland, Ohio area and you want to come check out some watches, please do stop in. We'd love to see you. In addition to that though, if you're on the website, ever have a question about one of the watches that we do sell, feel free to reach out to us on live chat. That little bubble in the bottom right corner, one of my team members can help you out with anything that you're taking a look at. And also how we're able to continue to do what we do here is through selling watches on our site. So if you are in the market for a watch, we'd absolutely love to have your business. I know you can buy a watch in a lot of different places nowadays, but it really allows us to keep doing what we're doing here, and I would greatly appreciate it. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I'll see you all very soon.